being included in a society, being included in our family, being included in our community is an innate need that we all have. We all want to feel included. We all want to be part of the thing around us. And when we feel excluded, that can lead to a lot of harmful thing for us and also for the society, or the whatever is in question, the family or the group at large. And in today's session, I want us to look into exclusions and inclusion and how that affects our internal lives as well as the system at large, how the system get affected by those things. Firstly, I want to read a comment that was sent in that kind of goes well with this session today. So the commenter wrote, "I always struggle with tradition because I'm queer, and a lot of voices from Africanists spew a lot of hate towards us." Okay, and then said, "Oh, well, was hoping if you could ever speak on that. Just a thought." Great. Thank you so much for writing that. And of course, I would really much like to speak on that. When we are in a society, and I must just add that we as a society have a long way to go in terms of inclusivity. We kind of still stuck on that us versus them idea. And it is getting there, but it's nearly not as inclusive as it should be where we are right now. A lot of cases, when we look at it in a systemic point of view, which is what I'll be looking at it today, in a systemic point of view. In other words, systemic, I mean I don't want to say spiritual point of view, but anyway, I'll use that. For lack of a better word, I'll say, in other words, looking at it in a spiritual point of view. Yeah. So, in a system, let me just make an example. I'll bring out my dollies to set us up for this session today. So, let's say these are siblings, right? These are 3 siblings, same parents and everything. They are part of a system, a family system. So they have a mother and a father, and they have uncles and grandmother and grandfather. They are part of a system. So let's say in these siblings, in this system, one of the siblings is a queer, is a homosexual, and their siblings or the family at large, they can't accept this person. So what happens? They will either cut them off by actually saying, "You're no longer welcome here, so please don't come." Or most likely, they will make the environment so hostile that this individual will kind of distance themselves, right? Will move away from the family. Now, there's now 2 scenarios, right? There's the one that left, that was excluded, and the ones that are excluding. Both of these parties are getting affected in a systemic lens very differently, but the affection, how they're affected is something is missing or someone is missing. Fine. So this person moves away. They go to try and start a new family, a new life, find themselves. And let's first look into the system. What happens now with the system? Usually, and now I'm speaking from my own experience with what I've worked with the clients, and also what I've seen in this work, in the systemic work, when this happens in the system, and also just experiences around me, what I've also observed over the years, what happened when something is excluded from a system, in this instance from a family, whether it's a person who was sent out to a mental institute and they kind of try to forget about that person and move on, or whether it's something that happened and the family is trying not to speak about it, or whether it's in a group of people, like here in South Africa, when a race is trying to be excluded from a society, that has impact for that system that we're talking about. So what happens usually, there's a space that needs to be filled, and maybe it wouldn't be this generation, but certainly the generation that would follow would start looking at that space that is missing. And also the consequences or the results of this could be addiction. Very commonly, families start being an addiction of either drugs or alcohol or food, or just violence in general. And the system is trying to get everyone's attention and say, hey, someone is missing. And although they probably would not connect 1 and 2 and say, since this person A has left, things around the house has just been chaotic. Things around us has been chaotic. Since this had happened, things are like this. Usually we don't even connect the two. The children that might follow might want to also leave, somehow have the feeling of going. They want to follow that person that was that had to leave. The person that left usually also is very much affected by one. They somehow then always, and this is not a prescription, of course, it's different from case to case, but the generalization would be that they would find themselves attracting places or people or running into the same cycle of feeling excluded until they look at that exclusion. So they would, maybe at work, they still feel like they don't belong. They feel people are trying to take them out and they feel excluded. And in their life path as well, they feel this big exclusion around them. And that is a big indication that that wound of exclusion is kind of being carried down now with them. And they might pass that to a generation to come, where their children or their grandchildren to come, they feel this deep sense of being excluded, but they don't get it because around them they are included. And we find out it's actually coming from this initial exclusion. And this initial exclusion that had happened in the separation is kind of, if we're looking at it in a systematic way, it kind of affects both parties. And of course, what the system always wants balance. It wants equilibrium. It wants this to come back together. And in most cases, it doesn't happen. In most cases, it doesn't come together, and this exclusion stay as it is. And maybe the next generation might be the one to amend that by including maybe that great grandfather that was excluded, by actually putting them as part of the family, to include that aunt that was put in a mental hospital and no one ever spoke of. That exclusion then can be mended for the generation that follows. And those are the kind of things where we say in layman's term, like a generational curse, which is basically something that has been somewhere where love kind of broke, or the flow of love was cut, and no one ever tried to mend that for the love to flow again, but we just try to move on. And then we're still being affected by these things later on in life. Now, I'm gonna focus more now on this individual, the one that are being excluded, because many of us are facing exclusion in a lot of angles of our life in this modern age we're in. And I would say the first thing really that is of ultimate importance for this individual, it would be to acknowledge that we are being excluded. And as simple, as easy as that sounds, most of the time we actually don't acknowledge that, because this comes with so much grief and anger towards the ones that excluded us. We go and kind of want to make it. We go in this drive of saying, my family as such this, or my company, or my culture, etc., and I will not look back, and I will not remember them, or I will not include them as well. And we kind of ignore the wound that just happened, that we just got stabbed or cut for who we are, or who we express ourselves to be, or if we were mentally challenged for being mentally challenged. We don't face that. And that means then we start running away from the very wound. And what it will do, it will try and get our attention as well. This hurt. It will try and get our attention because we're carrying it with us. We haven't put it to rest, right? So that's why in situations we're going to find ourselves feeling like, I'm like always in this situation. I'm always feeling excluded. I'm always feeling like I'm not loved, if that was the root cause. So looking and facing at this exclusion is the number one thing. And it's kind of like we are facing our demon at that point, our biggest hurt, our biggest trigger, and say, my family or this group excluded me, or I'm being excluded because of who I am, because of my sexuality, for example. And once we are able to look into that, it is easier for us to kind of go into the world knowing what being excluded one feels like. And when we are in situation, to not kind of let this entangle our whole life, where we always feel like now we are excluded. That's kind of like putting this to rest. And I would say the next important thing, obviously, it will be to nurture that exclusion, to go out and be intentional by including yourself in situations. And with regards to the comment that I just read, when they were saying in a lot of talks or conversations about tradition, they feel excluded or they feel hatred coming towards them, and that is making them retreat. That is making them kind of turn back and say, well, I don't feel included in this, so I don't want to be part of this. And in most cases, that's exactly what we need to do in order to survive, because it might be very hateful to be in that system, to be in that family, to be in that field where you are being attacked and there's bad things that are spoken to you. So it's wise at that to kind of retreat and just, don't deal with that. But doing that intentionally, that's very wise. But doing that unintentionally by being angry and try and step back and try and fight that's where we lose our power, actually. So I would say number one, I feel like this commenter is very much aware of what they've been excluded of, and is not wanting to retrieve, but they want that inclusion to happen. And so their task then would be to put yourself in a situation where you can speak about maybe you being queer in such settings, right? In where if you can find a way to be in an environment where they are Africanist, as you call them, and you can, speak and maybe not even make it about your sexual orientation or your preference, anything like that, but rather about what you actually are saying. Just speak your truth and let that be that. And once we don't identify as much as the one that was excluded, because being excluded, it's very different from being a victim, but it is a very thin line, I would say, but it is an archetype almost, like that exclusion kind of becomes us, that we are not included in these topics, that we are not included in these spaces, and we kind of then arm up to always be ready to defend ourselves, to fight for ourselves, to feel exclusion and included, and to fight for that. And when we turn inwards, and kind of do these little works where we look at that original hurt and we try and include that person within us who was excluded, that's when we start to have the resilience to be in spaces where we can speak about our truth. So I'm assuming you can speak about culture, you can partake in culture and in your tradition and really take pride in that without feeling like you don't have to because of your sexual orientation or because of your preference, right? And that will be then the goal. I would say another thing would be that when we're talking about inner parts, which will follow this video because I don't want to make this too long, inner parts are all the parts within us that kind of come in place for certain things, right? When we are at work, we bring this part of us that is a professional IT guy. When we are with our grandparents, we bring the granddaughter or the grandson, etc. And I want to speak on inner parts and do a little session on that because it kind of ties together with this one. But I'm going to leave this one here. And just to close off, to say, first, we need to include ourselves, all those parts. We need to include the part of us that is queer, the part of us that is or our innate self in whatever way, and to see that we are being conditioned to kind of hate that part of ourselves, because this original pain, when you're being excluded, you're going to look in yourself and think, this part of me is bad or is not included, and that's why we're going to try and fight for it for as long as we can. And when we have to look at it and accept it and say, it's not bad, it's good, it's part of me, it's me, and then we can move forward in just expressing ourselves in that beauty of that part of us. Another thing, please do watch the next video that will come after this, because it will be a good tie with the inner parts work. I will probably come in a few days after this one. Again, thank you so much for the comment that was sent through. And if you do want to send a comment or something that you want me to look into in a systemic way in this bird eye view, it's like becoming a bird and we kind of look at it from the above, you can send that to me. I have received some comments and some emails actually that I will answer them in the form of videos for the benefit of everyone when the time comes. But thank you for the emails. I see them and really appreciate that. And also thank you to everyone that had joined this YouTube channel. I welcome all of you and thank you for all the technological things you're doing, the liking, the commenting, the subscribing. It's all such new to me to be here, but I'm really looking forward to this journey that is happening. I usually work online mostly, so I am familiar with working through a screen with Zoom sessions and workshops and stuff, but this is kind of different. But I'm really, really enjoying it. So thank you. And yeah, till we have another session. Have a good one.